Dr. Susan Nabada. I'm the Commissioner and Executive Director of National Health Laboratory Services, Ministry of Health, which is the technical arm for Ministry of Health to oversee and coordinate lab services in the country. With those remarks, the overview of who we are, what the lab services look like in the country, what we do at the National Health Laboratory Services is going to be shown to you by my lab director, Dr. Isaac Sewanyana, to have a real feel of who we are.
Laboratory services are traced back in 1926 in Uganda, when we had the first laboratory during the colonial times of the British. And in 1975, the Central Public Health Laboratory unit was formed under the Ministry of Health, and it was a unit in the National Disease Control Department. And it has since grown that in 1998 it was promoted to being a division in the Ministry of Health, and in 2018 it has become a department under the Ministry of Health. A department is headed by a commissioner in the Ministry of Health. So the Uganda National Health Laboratory Services has two major roles. One is to provide governance and stewardship, which involves coordination of laboratory services in the entire country. And the second role is to provide reference services, especially for the specialized services that cannot be offered at lower health facilities. We have built a lot of capacity, as you see in the video, for to support the specialized lab services. Actually, our lab here is just one of the two labs in Africa, Southern Africa, actually, below the Sahara, that has the capacity to perform over 2 million PCR tests in a year. So it's just next to a lab in Cape Town. So we have fully automated equipment. We have built strong quality systems that our lab actually is accredited under ISO 15189. And this is the ISO accreditation systems for medical labs, and our lab is international accredited. It would mean that the services you get to this lab, from this lab, are of the same standards, say, of the labs you'd get in the US, in Canada, or elsewhere, labs that subscribe to the ISO or standards. The Uganda National Health Laboratory Services is headed by a commissioner who reports to the Director General of Medical Services in the Ministry of Health, and then it oversees the laboratory cascade down. We have a tier system, so all the labs from the regional referral hospitals to general hospitals to Health Center 4s and Health Center 3 laboratories are reporting through the Uganda National Health Laboratory Services. It also has coordination with national specialized labs like the Joint Clinical Research Center, Uganda Virus Research Institute, National TB Reference Labs, and many others. So these labs that are highly specialized and research labs are also in coordination. It also coordinates with the Allied Health Practitioners Council, which oversees and regulates especially private labs. So on the coordination arm of the lab, we develop laboratory policies and guidelines. We develop standard operating procedures and ensure quality of lab services across the entire network. We are responsible for the quantification of commodities for budgeting purposes and ensuring that all labs in the country have commodities to sustain laboratory testing. We provide mentorship and support supervision through the network, and we do this in collaboration with a lot of stakeholders and centers of excellence like JCRC and other labs, RCI project, whichever specializations the labs are. So we oversee all the mentorship and ensure that we see a transition of skills and knowledge from the centers of excellence to lower health facilities and public health facilities. We ensure harmonization of equipment and maintenance of equipment and calibration of equipment, laboratory equipment, and we oversee the accreditation, quality assurance, improvement projects that lead to accreditation of labs in the country. So because laboratory services are not offered at every health facility, we have a national sample transport network which is able to support the referral of specimen to labs that have the capacity to do the testing. So the national sample transport network is built on what we call hubs. So hubs, they are mainly the major hospitals, regional referral hospitals or general hospitals or health center falls in the different parts of the country, and these are mapped across. We map lower health facilities in a diameter of 30 to 40 kilometers around these health facilities, and all the health facilities in that catchment area becomes the spoke of this hub. So we have riders, especially in the countryside, bike riders, who rotate across these health facilities, transporting commodities, returning results, and picking samples for referral to higher health facilities. And so these transporters will bring the samples to the hub, and then from the hub, we have some tests that are offered there. They can be tested at the hub, and they can be able to return the results in the same mechanism. And if the tests are not offered at the hub, these samples are referred to higher labs that are able to do these kind of tests. So here at the UNHLS, we provide some of these reference services, including HIV for early infant diagnosis. We do sickle cell testing still for early infant diagnosis. We perform viral load to monitor patients' performance on ART, and a number of other tests, including cancer screening, blood cancer screenings, hepatitis B, hepatitis C testing, and several others. So these are mainly tests that require high technology that we cannot easily translate to lower health facilities. And even when we can be able to translate to lower health facilities, we found it relatively cost-effective, cheaper, and sustainable to centralize some of this testing. So this hub has a network of, it brings together in total close to 3,000 health facilities, including those that have labs at different levels and those that don't have labs at all. And the hubs are 100 in total. And this gives a coverage of over 97% of the entire health facilities in the country. So it also includes facilities that are private. So we have also built strong information systems. We have a huge server with storage capacities here. and we're using especially mobile network to achieve connectivity to lower health facilities. And we're building information systems to be able to provide lab services to lower health facilities, collecting data from the lower health facilities, but also transmitting results. Like, for example, the services we offer here at the National Health Laboratory Services. So this information system is actually good and strong innovations. It's work in progress because we are moving towards electronizing much of the services that we're doing throughout the country. And it has also helped to cut down on the turnaround time, especially results. The loop of returning results back to health facilities becomes extremely shorter. These information systems have also helped us to keep track of the trends and real-time information, access to information for the different programs. Like, for example, the early infant diagnosis. We have a dashboard that gives you live updates as it happens, the testing is happening. So every day, every month, every week, every month, every year, you can keep track of how many children are testing positive. We use this data to follow up on these children who are positive, for example, to enroll them into ART services. This information is also used by our partners and our collaborators and even researchers in the field. So it's really very powerful to use these information systems. Another example is, for example, monitoring patients on ART. Yeah, we have a dashboard that gives you real-time information for patients who are testing for viral load real time. So you have the numbers, you have the suppression rates, and you can break it down to districts, to sub-county. And this information is very useful, especially for the HIV program. And the beauty is that it's real time. And it has actually helped a lot in Uganda's progress towards achieving epidemic control for HIV. So overall, we're using quite a number of interventions here to try and provide services to the Ugandan population. A typical Ugandan population would live in the countryside, in rural areas, and they have limitations with transportations. They have limitations with resources that can support their transportation to health facilities. So by equipping health workers to provide basic health services, and then using things like the sample transport network, collecting samples on dry blood spots and information systems, we're able to get these highly sophisticated labs that are highly with high quality lab services that are accredited. So ideally, we are kind of using this as a vehicle to take these services to the backyard of every Ugandan in the country. And that explains the success of the especially HIV services to the Ugandan populations. Because we collect a lot of samples, we have also built a modern biorepository with well-characterized samples and information. And these samples, we aim that they can serve to foster research, to foster collaborations, and also to especially implementation science that can lead to innovations that can help us improve services in the country. We have supported quite a number of labs through the stepwise improvement projects that lead to accreditation. So there is a WHO developed tool, and Uganda, we have adopted it and we've used it to improve quality services across the laboratory network. And currently we have over 13 government facilities, public health laboratories that are accredited under ISO 189. So which is a really big achievement, and we look forward to seeing more laboratory services are accredited. And as we build strong lab services, we are improving the quality of care in the country.
So we are an ISO accredited lab. We are accredited by SANAS, and we are also a WHO pre-qualification lab. We test in vitro diagnostics before they can be put on the market, especially for the third world countries. So we pre-qualified for HIV, we do for HIV and hepatitis. Currently, we are also implementing a program, preparing panels for external quality assurance for the point of care machines, because we're trying to decentralize the EID testing to be able to reach to those millions of babies that we are not able to reach.
Where we are standing right now is the sample reception of the institution, and this is the first time point where samples from across the country, from the different districts and the different hubs come. A number of samples are received at the sample receptions, and these fall from diagnostics and surveillances and outbreaks, and also EQA samples for external quality assurance programs. And for example, these are the plasma samples that come from the health facilities. This is still a monitoring test that is targeting hepatitis B viral load, which where they collect a sample to see if this patient has any level of hepatitis B after they have been initiated on their drugs. And still in terms of sample management, we have a number of 2 to 8 refrigerators where we are able to store the samples to maintain the integrity of the sample. So together here we have approximately 4 2 to 8 refrigerators. People coming in from the different facilities can be able to store the samples at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for a minimum of 3 to 5 days to preserve the integrity of this sample. This way, anytime you retrieve this sample for testing, whether it is HIV viral load or hepatitis B viral load, you can be able to get accurate and precise results to be given to the patient. This section here is the wet area of sample reception, so we shall be moving on to the dry area of the department where they receive the dry blood samples. This is the dry area for the sample reception department, and right here I'm with the team that works on a team of laboratory technologists that do the primary role of receiving and approving the different samples that come from the health facilities. So right here we have the dried blood spots sample, and the advantage of having the dry blood sample is that it can remain viable for approximately 14 days, and you can still carry out HIV viral load monitoring tests on the same sample versus the plasma. So you find that most of these samples come in from the remote health facilities of Uganda that do not have the capacity for cold chain management. But at the same time, you can be able to get an accurate and precise result. And alongside the sample, they still collect the associated information from the patient that can be entered into the laboratory information management system in order to manage the data and results that will come from the sample. So we have the
HIV viral load monitoring laboratory information management system, where we are able to approve the sample or reject the sample depending on the quality of the sample. So you find that for a dried blood spot sample, you approve it when you have all the circles are fully clotted with the dried blood spots, because we assume that approximately 2 milliliters go into each spot. Then you must have at least 4 spots, and the sample should be properly labeled for you to approve it. So if it is less than 4, we reject the sample, and we have a clear sample acceptance and rejection criteria. So there are a number of testing assays for HIV. The first one is the rapid diagnostic tests. For example, the Determine, Unigold, and SD Bioline, which is normally used for HIV testing at the health facilities. But here we do the DNA PCR for the HIV exposed infants. And by HIV exposed infants, we mean the children that are born to HIV positive mothers, because DNA PCR is a sensitive test that can detect HIV as early as 2 weeks of age. So we want these children to get their test as early as possible, so that they can begin manage. If they are positive, they can start being managed on antiretroviral therapy, since studies have shown that the earlier you start the antiretroviral therapy, you get better outcomes. And if the child is negative, you can be able to also manage them appropriately in terms of management, and also breastfeeding, and also for psychological support for the mothers. After the samples have been appropriately approved, this is an example of a sample that has been approved. It is properly packaged and identified by its location number, and then these samples right here are ready for pickup to be taken to the laboratory for HIV monitoring, testing, or early infant diagnosis testing.
From sample reception, we receive different sets of data. We receive viral load data, HIV viral load. We receive HIV hepatitis viral load. We also do EID and sickle cell data, and we also do capture COVID sets of data. So when they bring it down in our department, we have LIMS, what we call laboratory information management systems. It comes allocated with different sets of updates, and we open up our LIMS using URL. We capture all the parameters, right from facility details, then patient details, and then the drugs and all the information from all the clinicians. We capture each and every parameter as it is scribbled on the form, and then we do save it. We do save that information in our LIMS, but before we save it, we verify that data, and then to make sure that what we have entered is the right information, and then we save it. This data is consumed within the house for decision making, for planning purposes, budgeting, allocation of resources, and not only within in-house, it is also used nationally. The Ministry of Health uses this information, this data. These LIMS are used internationally, and the information we capture is also consumed by our IP funders, by implementing partners. By implementing partners and the donors, they also consume this data. So it is very, very key, very paramount, very important.
This is the facility where we do test them from. This area is the preparation area, sample preparation area. So we receive plasma samples and DBS, dry blood spot samples for HIV, and then plasma for hepatitis B. So we do test viral load for both hepatitis B and HIV. We generate a worksheet in a system that has 96 samples. So this worksheet, these samples have unique identifiers and unique locator IDs that are specific for that sample on the worksheet. So this is what guides us in our processes. Once you make a worksheet of 96 samples, so it prepares the tubes you're seeing here, which has the 96 samples that correspond with the worksheet. Now after that, these samples are eluted using these heat blocks. So what we are doing here in elution, we are trying to get the blood that was on the dry blood spot off the card into a solution form that we are going to use and load on the machine. Once you get that dry blood spot, you elute it and you get a solution. In other words, you're trying to get blood from the paper, and then this is a Panther machine. So we use it also to do a viral load. It does also HCV, it does hepatitis. Yeah, this is another technology, a platform that we use. So after preparing your samples that side, you come here and load the samples here onto the machine. It's a robotic kind of system. So you set it, it does the extraction. So if you have a dry blood spot or a plasma sample, what this machine does, it extracts the RNA of the virus, HIV virus. Once it extracts the RNA of the virus, so you do what we call amplification. So when you amplify the virus, then you go that side where we do the detection from. So the machine will be able to tell you, in this person's blood, he has approximately this number of copies of the virus. So depending on what the machine tells us, then we shall be able to know whether the patient is responding to treatment or not responding to treatment. Before they conclude by saying someone is resistant to the drugs, they should switch to another line of drugs or second line or superior line of drugs. So we have a cut of less than 1,000 copies. That person is suppressing the virus, is taking the drugs. Above 1,000 copies, probably this person is not taking the drugs, or there is something wrong with the system, or the person is developing what they call resistance. In a day, we output over 4,000 results, HIV viral results, over 4,000 daily. In a week, so in a month, we output around 120,000 viral results. Yes. So basically, this is what we do here. This is another lab. You know, this lab is in stages. We have a preparation area, a processing area, and then a detection area. So after extracting your sample and adding what we call master mix reagents, so you come here and do the detection from this room. This is called the post-amp room, post-amplification room. So what happens here, a machine will give you results for each sample that was on that worksheet. For example, it will give you a result of every patient whose sample appeared on that worksheet. It has 96 samples, a worksheet, so you'll be able to see. Like I said, we have a cutoff of 1,000 copies. So if someone has results that are above 1,000, probably that person is not suppressing the virus, or the person is not adhering to treatment, or the person is developing resistance. So before you conclude on that, they do what they call adherence counseling for 3 months, and then they take off a viral sample again, and we see if after 3 months this person is still getting a result that is above 1,000, probably now a committee will review the results of that person, and then they conclude whether the person should be switched to another line of drugs. However, those who are responding to treatment, the results will come out as target not detected. So the copies are below 1,000. The copies are below 1,000. So the person is suppressing the virus in their system. This is called the Cobas 8800. So we have two machines. So this machine, we use it for viral load. We use it for molecular biology assays, and now we are currently using it to test for COVID-19. So this machine has capacity of giving you results, 4,000 results daily in 24 hours, 4,000 results, and you have two platforms. After preparing the samples, you come and load them into the machine. Then the machine will do the extraction to give you the results.
we find out for the first time that the patient viral load is above 1,000 or is unsuppressed, the clinicians go ahead to do intensive care adherence monitoring models, and they repeat that after 3 or 6 months. They do another viral load. If they find out that the patient viral load is high, it's above 1,000 still, we suspect that this patient must have had drug resistance. And we do what we call HIV genotyping. In this case, we get the virus, we look at its DNA, and we see what changed on the virus, because what changes on the DNA impacts how it responds to the drugs. We can tell with that test that this patient can be put on this drug and this patient cannot be put on this drug, what we call the drug susceptibility scores. So you find that this guides clinicians to decide for this patient or the next course of action for this patient. However, it can also help tell the clinician that this patient has not been adhering to treatment. When you find that his subsequent viral loads are high, but there is no resistance in this patient, so we recommend to the clinician to go ahead and put intensive care adherence to models to this patient. So as a lab, we established a platform where we can do as very many tests as possible, as many as 600 tests per week for on a national program, and we can avail that sample result within 2 weeks time point when we find out that this patient, or when we suspect that this patient is not suppressing. So for clinicians, they usually do this when they are initiating treatment, when someone has never taken treatment. So they do a test to see which drug is best for them, because we all know that there is some percentage of drug resistance within the population, even when you're not in drugs, but it's already there. So some, they do that, those who can afford, but with the national program, they start you right away, but along the way, when you continue failing, you're referred for drug resistance. That aids which other drugs can be given to you, because with HIV, we don't have very many options around. We have very few, and we have to be very careful with whatever option we give you, and that's why we opt for a drug resistance test. In the viral section, if after doing the test, we have databases that can tell us that this patient has been on treatment and they have done 2 subsequent viral loads and they are above 1,000, right? That helps us to select. The system tells us that this patient is eligible for drug resistance. So we pick that patient's sample, they help us extract the viral DNA or RNA of the virus, and we get it out, we bring it here, and then we amplify it, what we call RT, reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. It helps multiply the virus in very many copies. When it's got from there, then we bring it here. Now we have it in DNA format, still in a sample. We put it in this machine. This machine helps us see the virus from the biological sample into the digital sample, meaning we are seeing its DNA onto the computer. So it gives us a report that looks a little more like this. This is one of the samples that we get from the machines, and then we have a database where we put these samples and reference it to the known virus, what we call a wild type. So if the patient virus within the body has changed, we see it in reference to the normal virus. In that case, we are able to tell that at this point there is a mutation, and this mutation confers resistance to the drugs the patient is on, and that helps us guide the clinician on which next course of action to take.
We receive 2 types of samples. Right now, we have samples that come in directly, those who request for sickle cell, and then the other group is those who request for sickle cell and early infant diagnosis for HIV. Sickle cell testing is important in that when a child is diagnosed early and found to be a sickler, they're given the management and with that they have a better life. But if we don't give them that, then we will not know how to manage them. That is why we encourage all mothers with newborns and all the ones who haven't been tested to bring in their children for testing so that they're managed better for a good life. We do selecting because we put samples onto the worksheet as we get them. So what we have is what we put on the worksheet. When it amounts to 80, we arrange them in an order, and after arranging them, we bring them here for punching. We have an elution buffer that enables the sample to elute. Remember, it's a DBS, and we want that liquid part, so we have to put an elution buffer to elute the samples. We give it 30 minutes. After the 30 minutes, we have to load them onto our gel box, and the method we are using in the lab is ISO electrofocusing. These are the gel boxes that we use. And this is what the gel looks like. So we load and put our samples here. We load the samples and let it run for approximately an hour. After an hour, we do the staining, then the washing. After washing, we put them in the dryer that lasts the black instrument for about 4 hours. And after the 4 hours, we are able to pull them out and do the reading, the scoring. And this is what our finished gel looks like. It carries 80 samples with controls.
We run different types of tests like culture and sensitivity. We also do microscopy and also weight preparation depending on the type of sample. Here we receive different types of samples like urine, stool, cerebrospinal fluid, blood, and high vaginal swab, ear swab, like that. For example, different type of sample require different type of media. If it is urine, first we do culture on blood agar, McConkey, chocolate, and also we do antibiotic activity to see maybe if the patient was undergoing some treatment. Sometimes this patient can say no, they are not in medication, yet the person is in medication, so we do antibiotic also activity. After we culture, we incubate for 24 hours. This is the incubator whereby we incubate the cultured plates here. For example, this is urine sample that we received yesterday. We cultured at around 5, so we are waiting for 25 hours to come and do what is called plate reading. This one is called blood agar. It's an enrichment media in that they have added blood to support any type of organism. It supports any type of organism. This one is chocolate agar. It's just a media whereby we have added blood and we have hemolyzed the blood, and this media supports those organisms that are fastidious like Neisseria, gonorrhea, Haemophilus influenza. And then this one is McConkey agar. It's a selective media in that, and also a differential media whereby it only selects and support the growth of gram-negative organism, and it's a differential media whereby it differentiates lactose fermenting organisms and non-lactose fermenting organisms. And this one is called saboride agar. It supports the growth of yeasts. If the person is having candida, this one will capture. It will support the growth of the yeast. And this one is Muller-Hinton agar, whereby I told you it's for antibiotic. We test for whether the patient was taking the medicine. Maybe the person was undergoing some treatment. After that, in case there is growth, what we do is plate reading, whereby we have some bench books. So whatever we have seen growing in the plate, we record. After that, with microbiology, when we see colonies, we do plate reading. Next step, we do microscopy. So if the patient was having parasite, we can be able to see under microscopy. Also, apart from that, if the person, we can also observe the yeast cells in that sample. For example, if it is urine or if it is high vaginal swab, we can also be able to observe under wet prep. Apart from that, we also capture the presence of flu cells in those samples, the high vaginal samples and urine sample. Here on BF, we shall be able to see this one enables us to see whether the organism is hemolysis pattern, whether it's gamma, beta, or alpha hemolysis. There are different organisms which show different characteristics when they are grown in different media. So after that, we can be able to identify them here. Apart from here, there is another step for identification, whereby if the organisms was a gram-negative organism, we always go ahead and do what is called, we set biochemicals, whereby we have different types of biochemicals in the lab. This includes the TS, triple sugar ion, the citrates, urea, whereby we are able to identify organisms. Examples of the organisms here, they include Escherichia coli, Salmonella typhi. Those gram-negative organisms, we do biochemicals. Apart from identifying them here, this one is a BD equipment, whereby this equipment we are able to identify an organism. For example, after it takes like not more than 30 minutes for you to get the organisms. And before there is a procedure which we do to identify organism using this machine. If we want to use this machine to identify organism, we get pure colonies from the cultured plate, and then we smear in different holes. As long as we have labeled, there are some forms whereby we label the number to match with the organism that you have smeared here. After you have prepared, you come and load it into this machine, whereby you load the number, you put some details, some information to the machine, to the computer, and then you load you load it here, whereby it will read it. After 30 minutes, you will be able to know the kind of organisms. There is also this other one, whereby this one is able to tell us the kind of organism. It is able to identify the organism, and also it also run antimicrobial susceptibility pattern. Then here you can get both the organism and also the drug, whereby it is of more advantage, because the way they have set the computer, it uses the CLSI standard. After identifying the organism, it gives you the drugs, and we know the drugs are grouped according to, they are from first class to like class A, class B, class C. You can get the results from here and you feed to the early system, whereby we use it also for receiving the samples.
And we process these samples, we receive them in these PPT tubes, and after processing them, we change them into cryovials. These cryovials are smaller, they don't take a lot of space, and we remove the plasma, put it in the cryovials. Because this one reduces space, so that we can keep it well in our freezers. So this one is in use, but after we have finished everything, we archive in our system and allocate a freezer. We receive a number of samples. We receive HIV samples, we receive COVID samples, we receive cholera samples, which are kept in the microbiology fridge, and all the samples which are deemed infectious, we keep them with the microbiology fridge. This is the microbiology fridge.
So in microbiology fridge, we keep isolates for different microorganisms, and these microorganisms come from the different health facilities across the country. So the work that is done on these samples, some of them are used for research, and then some of them are used for antimicrobial drug resistance testing.
These are some of the samples we have kept for long-term storage, and we have capacity of keeping these samples for 15 years and more. So far, we have samples of 5 years here, since we have just established ourselves. We are not more than 10 years old, but we hope to keep these samples for more than 20 years. And these samples will help us in research, of which we don't know it, but it will come with time. From the plasma we get from the samples we receive, this is how we keep them. These are the cryovials we keep them, and they are safe here. They cannot be destroyed. We have some 2017. We have 2017, 2018, and 2016, because we want to improve our health system. So anytime these samples are needed, we can give them to people or researchers. Then the other thing also, we still have space, more space for storage of these samples, and we also want to encourage researchers to continue using the biorepository, because we have a lot of samples of which today they may not be in use, but we want to encourage researchers to come and use these samples. We have a temperature monitoring system which has probes, and these probes are fixed in the freezers. So as you see, our temperatures at -8, they are very low, and in case they run out of range, this system notifies us by sending for us an SMS. So we can know that there is a problem with this freezer. We come and see what to do so that the temperatures stay constant to keep our samples safe.
Visit our website, cphluganda.org, to be able to access all the information they might want to get from our, relating to our institution. We have all these dashboards that you can, look around and see how basically you can come in and help us to maybe improve the kind of system that we are giving. We have an enormous task to give a service to over 45 million Ugandans, and the opportunities are immense.
We have samples that we've been collecting across the entire country, representative of different communities in Uganda over different period of time. They can be used for surveillance purposes. We have used these samples, for example, to determine the sickle cell burden in Uganda, and we were able to narrow down on which communities that are highly hit by the sickle cell, which is a hereditary trait disease We can also support a lot of implementation science, especially laboratory-based implementation projects, trying out different diagnostic tools or using aids that can promote the quality of diagnostic tools, supporting health facilities, for example, to easily monitor their stocks, to have timely ordering and avoid stockouts that can interrupt services, and those kind of things. We can also support a lot of public health interventions. In this regard, I'm very much interested in application of information systems or artificial intelligence to promote health services. Things like developing apps that can be able to help health facilities, like for example, tracking patients who are due for their next appointment in hospitals, apps that can help health workers to access patient results on their phones with a very quick search, yeah, especially if they can be able to interact with the databases in a very simple way. Apps that can be able to track, like for example, where are children testing for, say, malaria RDTs. So we use a lot of RDTs to screen for malaria. But if you had a quick phone app where someone is able to log in and update as they do malaria testing, then you can get to know where is the malaria happening, and over time you can be able to monitor trends. You can easily be able to predict the malaria epidemics during especially rainy seasons. But also you can keep track of the RDTs that are being used, because when you have this data, it can tell you when people are getting false positives, or when people are registering a lot of negatives where you're predicting to have a lot of malaria during that time. So these kind of apps can be very, very helpful in picking information that can be very powerful in informing healthcare.